India could be the next destination for Elon Musk's Starlink. Musk's Starlink just moved a step closer to launching its much-anticipated satellite services in the South Asian giant. According to Money Control, Musk has agreed in principle to meet all of India's security conditions, and with that, Starlink's licensing process is back on track. But here's a twist. Musk is now locked in a fierce head-to-head battle with Indian telecom giants Reliance Jio and Airtel, and we will tell you all you need to know. Starlink is desperate to enter India, and rightly so. India is the world's second biggest market with 692 million active internet users. That's nearly 8 times the population of Turkey, for example, and nearly double the US population. In fact, the United States is third in the list behind India in the list of most active internet users with 311 million. Indonesia is fourth with 213 million internet users. Brazil completes the top 5 with 181.8 million users, ahead of Russia with 127 million active internet users in 6th spot. China currently remains at number 1 spot with nearly a billion active internet users, but India is slowly closing this gap to China. No wonder then that the world's biggest satellite internet players want to enter the Indian market. Elon Musk's Starlink has been joined by Jeff Bezos and Amazon's Project Kuiper, as the two global players are locked in a head-to-head battle to become the first to enter India. But the Narendra Modi government has placed strict regulations for these global players, which they had to agree to even before their applications could be processed. Earlier, the nod had been granted by the government to OneWeb by Airtel as well as Reliance Jio-backed SES, but for months the Department of Telecommunications held off granting Starlink its satellite broadband or GMPCS license unless they first agreed to comply with India's rigorous security norms. So what are they? Firstly, any satellite communication company in India must store all its data within the country. This data localization mandate is one of the government's primary requirements and aims to secure data sovereignty, ensuring that the sensitive information of Indian users stay within its borders. Any player also had to ensure that Indian intelligence agencies have access to such data if legally required. Secondly, the government requires these satellite providers to make their terminals automatically stop transmitting if there is a shift in geographic location, especially near sensitive border regions. Now, this is to prevent any breach of security. Thirdly, Starlink must monitor any cross-border risks carefully, as India aims to prevent unauthorized data access in these sensitive border regions or zones. Now, in recent meetings with the DOT, Starlink gave an in-principle commitment to fulfill these terms, but further steps are still needed for final government approval. Moreover, India demanded the shareholding structure of Starlink and Amazon's Project Kuiper, as well as to disclose any links to US intelligence services. Starlink has also reportedly clarified that none of its shareholders are from China or Pakistan, thus there is no risk of compromising India's national security. Well, on paper, these rules seem quite stringent by the Indian government. What do you think? Should all foreign companies follow such rules to operate in India? Now, this brings us to the titanic battle brewing in India's communications sector. The main point of contention is spectrum allocation. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, is still working with stakeholders to establish the best methodology for distributing and pricing the satellite spectrum. Indian telecom giants like Mukesh Ambani's Reliance and Bharti Mittal's Airtel argue that this spectrum should be auctioned to create a level playing field. Indian companies emphasize that foreign players must not bypass this auction process and should face the same spectrum pricing requirements. For Indian telecom players, the core issue is Starlink's potential to serve urban consumers. Unlike satellite providers focusing on remote regions or connectivity, Starlink aims to provide high-speed internet directly to consumers in mega cities, a market that's already dominated by Indian terrestrial network players. Indian companies argue that since satellite services would directly compete with their own urban offerings, there should be a fair competition rules applied. Now, Starlink, on the other hand, argues that satellite services are fundamentally different from terrestrial or land-based telecoms, so they should not be treated the same. During a TRAI session, Starlink argued that satellite spectrum should be allocated administratively and not through an auction. So what's your take? Should foreign satellite operators have special administrative allocation, or should they compete in an open auction? Meanwhile, India's space economy has huge or vast potential. In space, India's space regulator projects that the country's space industry could reach a staggering $44 billion by 2033. Now that would push India from its current 2% share of the global space economy up to 8%. So there's much more at stake than just market dominance. This is a race for global industry leadership, as India is bound to be among the fastest growing satellite markets in the world. Given Elon Musk's close association with US President-elect Donald Trump, with Musk even dancing in Trump's campaign rallies and expected to play a role in the Trump administration, there are also concerns whether Starlink might leverage diplomatic backing to gain further traction in the Indian market. But as of now, Starlink has met all primary requirements of the Indian government, as well as submitted an application to the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, or INSPACe. The satellite internet race in India is just beginning. With TRAI expected to finalize spectrum allocation guidelines by December, we will soon know if India's telecom giants like Reliance and Airtel can keep their turf secure, or if Elon Musk's Starlink can disrupt India's telecom and internet industry. Leave a comment with your opinion and subscribe to Inconnect News for more current affairs and geopolitics.